Business is simple. It's just not easy. We focus on 3 things to help you run and grow your business more easily: talent, sales, and how to scale. This is the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Hey everyone, this is Bryan Whittington with the Talent, Sales, and Scale podcast. Today we have Nadir Mansor with us. Now, he's bringing a lot. I'm telling you right now, you better hold on because he's going to piss you off. He's going to challenge every insight that you have. He's going to make you angry, and I love it, right? So he's really going to change the way that we approach things. So he's coming in with us from a couple of different things. One, he's a real big participant in kind of a growing community, Rev Genius. Secondly, has a really cool software that he's getting up and out there. So take advantage of it, called Great Insights, GR8 Insights. And then lastly, look him up on his podcast, the SDR Conversion Excellence. So he brings to us a lot of experience, a lot of different thought. And oh, by the way, he's coming out of this real world. He didn't just write a book 10 years ago, and now we're supposed to listen to him. So with all that said, welcome, Nadir.
Thanks, Bryan.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, so, I always start off with this, right? So we got all kinds of software out there. We got all kinds of podcasts. We got all kinds of insights. So, why in the world should we listen to you about this idea of a thinking SDR, right? An SDR is supposed to hit the phone, read the script, send the template email, do lead conversion. Why in the world should we listen to you about having an SDR be that critical thinker, thinking SDR?
That's a great, loaded, but great question. First and foremost, I think there are a lot of people out there that have done a great job in raising awareness around the why and the what. When it comes to sales and the SDR function, right? You always hear about the why the SDR function matters, and you link it back to the ability to create pipe for the business, the why you should have an infrastructure around building a great SDR community, and so on and so forth. And what are the outcomes, right? Increase conversions, make it a better sort of experience for the buyer. But the one thing that I almost always struggle with was identifying the how in a form of clarity, focus, and execution. How do you build that how when it comes to the executing on that why and what? And that's where I kind of saw a gap when it comes to all of these sort of softwares, if you will, and people that are holding their podcasts. And for me, as an SDR firsthand, that was a big pain point, because you would understand why you should read an annual report, right? You understand what you get out of it. The problem was, how the hell do I do that and do that at scale, for example? That was one of the questions I had, right? How do I make sure that the prospect I'm talking to sees me as somebody that will contribute to the conversation beyond this guy is just in it for the quota, for the volume, for getting paid, whatever that may be, right? So how do you transition from that kind of perspective, which clearly, and I think you'll agree, buyers do have, right? You pick up the phone, as soon as you say, hi, my name is XYZ, and I'm calling from XYZ, that sort of precedent of having had that call over 1,000 times across 10 years, you jump to that conclusion, this guy is going to sell me something. So you don't have that perception of curiosity. And we spoke about curiosity. A lot of people are speaking about curiosity from an SDR's perspective, but we kind of took away the curiosity from the buyer's perspective, right? This guy's probably coming with something that I don't know about, and he's probably going to challenge me with questions that might help me. And how do you get to that stage, right? And one of the pillars to get to that stage is the thinking process. It's the ability to stop and think about what kind of questions can I ask? How can I tell these stories in a way that matches my customer's sort of ideal concept or ideal focus? And to do that right now, as much as there are a lot of talent and a lot of people that are looking to contribute, it's quite fragmented as a message, and there isn't a source that you can take from and sort of adapt to it and see a sustainable result that then gets adopted in mass, right? And that's really why I kind of jumped into this, is because on the one hand, I wanted to create a system that people could adopt, right? That could leverage, that could answer part of that how question to reach as a thinking SDR. But on the other hand, I also look at people like, for example, Mike Simmons, people like you who are trying to contribute to the thinking process on the other end of how do I get these people to develop that mindset, to develop that skill of telling stories, of asking the right questions, of coming with a curiosity mindset, of understanding the business, of understanding the customer, and all of these things. And Mike Simmons, with his Catalyst sale, they tap into that. They tap into how do you create a thinking sales individual and a thinking SDR, and the reward then is the why and the what. That's what you get with the how, and I feel like that's why I wanted to get in.
Okay, so there's a lot there. So thank you for that. So a couple of things from that, really what you're saying is a thinking SDR, let's define it a little bit, put some context to it, right? So a thinking SDR is one that is able to raise curiosity, ask the proper questions, and do storytelling to go back to the beginning, raising curiosity. Is that what a thinking SDR is? That overly simplified?
Well, I mean, you have to take into consideration the understanding of your own business and the understanding of the customer himself. Those are important drivers into this, because those are the kind of insights that will help make those storytelling, that will help make those questions more valuable to the prospect and more valuable to the SDR as he positions that meeting to then become an opportunity, and so on and so forth. So it's more of an ensemble of these different drivers that will allow for the thinking SDR to sort of come to shape, really.
Okay, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've heard you use this from your other podcast that you're on. It's really bringing a business acumen to these people. So
Yeah,
a thinking SDR is one who has business acumen to be able
yeah.
that in that business acumen, thinking SDR is going to have an understanding of their business, their product or service, how that product or service within their business is going to be able to solve the problems of that prospect through raising curiosity, of being provocative, asking hard questions. Hey, how do you deal with this? When this happens, what do you do? Right? Asking those difficult questions and being able to storytell, tying in product service to those problems with a good business case. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, but what I would add in is the most important part is understanding the business of your customer.
Hmm.
That's what is meant by business acumen, is really understanding the business of your customer. So for example, I could call you and say, hey Brian, just out of context and intent, I just happen to have read your 10K and noticed that you're looking to invest heavily into upskilling your sales team in terms of soft skills. Would you be against me asking you, how are you currently looking to de-risk the ability to execute on this initiative as much as possible? So what you're doing is you're showing him relevance and reference to what is it that they're doing by understanding their business and what their corporate strategy is, and then aligning that with a question that ensures that you understand where the gaps are, so that then you give leeway to where your product can come in, ultimately to then match that with a story and bring on more curiosity to drive that impact, that high impact sort of answers and questions that will then ensure that that conversion, when the meeting gets booked and the person comes on board for a meeting, that's how you create that really value based approach. And you need a thinking process to evolve around all of this. It's not an easy thing to do, right? So it's a combination of things that you've mentioned, but it's also most importantly understanding the customer himself. And every customer is unique, independent of whether they operate in the same vertical for 10 years. Every pain point will be different. Some companies are good at something and some are bad at something, but none of them are the same. And that's where the differentiator comes to be when it comes to thinking, as to what is the most relevant thing for the prospect to bring in terms of conversation and approach.
Okay, so you brought relevance and reference. Now, that's tying it all together. So let's pretend that you're going after an SMB. You can't
Yeah.
go after the 10K, right? So for those who are listening that might not be familiar with it, a 10K is out of the annual report where it's showing Section 1A, right? It's the the risk, right? The risk
Yeah, so
section.
it's like risk factors, materiality matrix,
Forward,
opportunities, sort
yeah,
of
forward looking
strategy,
statements kind of thing.
whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So if they don't have that, what are maybe some alternative ways that we can bring that risk, or excuse me, that relevance and reference?
But that's a really great question. And see, the thing when it comes to SME, and I've pitched SME myself, right? And the thing is, it depends from sector to sector. I'll give you an instance. Is for example, I used to work for an IP intelligence platform, and every single SME likes to brag about how they're patenting, disrupting, innovating, and so on and so forth. So what you're looking at that is coming now as something that is very important for a business is investment in marketing, creating content, showcasing where the company is focused, where the company is going in terms of roadmap. And that's the second alignment that you can bring on as an SDR is if I can have access to the risks, I can have access to their opportunities, to their forward thinking mindset, to their roadmap. And how can I be part of that roadmap? And to come up on board with that curiosity, but still reference and relevance around I understand based on reading your marketing content that you're looking at focusing and growing in this specific area within that specific year. Seems like it's a very arduous job, but I was curious, how are you guys looking to de-risk your initiatives on that front? So
Now,
you can
so
always
here's a
find a way.
Yeah, so here's a curious thing. You're talking risk and reward. You're talking pain and pleasure, right? So I come out of my old sales vernacular or what Sandler vernacular. If you go with the challenge or whatever the case may be, and what works is as optimistic as you would like to be. Unfortunately, pain sells better. Pain gets somebody to take action. So it's that risk and reward. And there's a math formula, and I can't remember what it is, but let's pretend it's 80/20. That 80% is the pain side or the risk side, because you've brought that up a couple of times now, Nadir, is how do you de-risk? How do you avoid this, right? How do you eliminate this challenge? So about 80% negative, but then where most people fall down or fail to do is then also ring in what would hope look like? What's life look like with this thing solved? So yeah, I like that. So you're saying look at the risk from a 10K, or if you don't have a 10K, look at their roadmap from all the content they're putting out. So let's get a little bit technical, specific on this. I'm sure that you can knock it out a couple of key ways. What are some key areas that whether I'm going 10K or non 10K that I can find some of this information?
Well, the funny thing is, I had the same question before I created Great Insight because that's literally what Great Insight does. It does that for me. So what it does is it actually looks at everything that is primary sourced or created by the company itself, from the marketing team, from the CEO if he showed up in a podcast or article, and it just finds anything that mentions those keywords that you're looking for that tie to your value proposition. So if you're not using a technology that can do that, the various means to sort of look at it from is either a senior member within the function that you're targeting showing up in an article or a podcast. Some companies that are mid-market or SMEs do have blog posts, right, where they share their vision. And to the point that you made earlier is you don't really need to find the risk per se if it's a SME. You just need to come in alignment with where the company is going and come with a curiosity mindset and ability to think on how do I tie that roadmap to a potential risk, and that's where you formulate the question and get this person to open up, right? And that's how you then get to sort of it's almost like, and this is an example of what private equity do, right? Private equity, they want to acquire a company that is not on the market, so it's not public, for example. And what they do is they get phone numbers of people that used to work in that company before, and they ask questions. They ask questions like, how was it? What was the pain point? How would they do this? So it's like you can always find a way if you come with a curiosity mindset and the right questions and the approach that really is most relevant to that prospect once you sort of approach them. So again, there isn't a right or wrong answer to that one because it depends on the product you're selling. It depends on the function you're targeting. So there isn't like a silver sort of bullet where you could just go to that one place and find exactly what you're looking for. It comes from different angles.
Yeah. So
the World Wide Web today.
let's give you a little bit of tactical work here too for the listeners. So, for example, whenever you're doing that, like Nadir is saying, hey, I can either grab this from his tool, his Great Insights tool, or I can also take it from knowing the business. So, for example, if I know that somebody's trying to break into a new market, there's likely a couple of pain bullets within trying to break into the new market. One, I can't find the people to call. Two, I don't know the message to call them. Three, I don't know the proper way to get in touch with them, touch with the right market with the right message. Or four, I don't have the right messenger, the salesperson, to be able to do what I need them to do through the medium to deliver the message to that market. So if I know those are four pain bullets, then I can ask questions around that, which goes back to, I think, what you were talking a little bit earlier, Nadir, about how do we give these people business acumen? So let me allow you to answer that one. I mean, what are some ways other than this Great Insights tool, which definitely grab it. It's really expensive. It's free right now, right?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
just for goodness sakes, if you're going to allow, if you're going to take advantage of Nadir's great opportunity of using this darn thing, give them some feedback for goodness sake. It's a pretty cool tool. So other than that tool, which is giving you from having to search on LinkedIn, right? What are they posting? What are they talking about? Doing the advanced search on Google, right? Where I'm going to put file type PDF or file type blah, 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 right? So I do all of those things, or I can use Nadir's cool tool. But how else, in addition to that, might I get some of that business acumen for my specific product or service in my industry?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. The number one thing is books.
Okay.
Number one is books, because what happens is, for example, one of my idols is Warren Buffett. Right. I just like the guy. There is this simplicity about him, but everything that he says is just genuine and to the point. And I remember I was reading his favorite book, The Intelligent Investor by Bill Graham. And I read the last version of it, and in there he was talking about how to install an intellectual framework within an organization. And there are so many things that you can learn from different books, some that associate within your industry and some that are generic in terms of how you look at the philosophy of business, how you look at the philosophy of investment, and so on and so forth. So one of the biggest sort of advantage I've got was, in every organization I worked for, I've read at least 5 books that relate to that industry. That's how you start to understand. And when I say industry, sorry, I mean also function. Because the business acumen is not just understanding the industry you operate under, is understanding the function that you're having to deal with. And having that sort of indirect mentorship from people that have been there and understand that, it gives you a wider understanding of what you're talking about. So when you say thinking involves understanding and involves knowledge. And the best way to acquire that business acumen and knowledge, at least to me, is uh, podcasts is another one. Reading books, definitely. Watching YouTube videos of conferences, for example. If you like reading, then even sort of articles, right, about a specific industry or function, and do that regularly. Regularly, it's not just something. Oh yeah, I did that. I read a book. It's something that you need to consistently sort of apply as a form of habit. And what you have then is, in 6 months' time, you'll be so knowledgeable beyond what you were 6 months ago. But when you are able to then leverage that knowledge into this thinking process, you'll then have all of these other things like curiosity, like the ability to ask the right questions, because you are knowledgeable. So that's a really important factor.
Yeah, so let's touch on that because I could hear now. Let's do some pushback, right? So there I am, the SDR. Listen, I'm not freaking reading a book. I just, all I need to do is set up an appointment and do a little bant, right? Do they have budget? Blah blah blah. What do you say to that person?
I say you're in the wrong business, and the reason I say this is because when you join sales, and this is my prediction, right? Sales is going to be the most dominant, most important, most sort of put out there function in a given business, because without sales you don't have a business. I mean, that's it's as simple as that, right? Number one. Number two, the SDR function, without SDR you don't have pipeline. Without pipeline, AEs can't execute. AEs can't do the SDR job. So the SDR job is going to be the most important sub function of the sales function. So it's going to be the most important function, sorry, of the sales function, because it's the one to which everything else revolves around. If you don't have meetings from SDRs, you have them from marketing. But marketing doesn't have the capability to target the specific ICP that you look for, and they don't have a control over who signs up for a meeting. So to be able to then ensure that these SDRs are doing the right job, creating the right brand for the organization, and learning the soft skills and the thinking process, you then have to think as an SDR about your career growth, your career path, right? Some people that develop the skills of the thinking process and the soft skills that come with the SDR job and the ability to provide clarity, focus, and execution when you do the job, you can then progress into the marketing side of things because you have an understanding of what the market is going through. You can transition into customer success because you're the front line when it comes to the sales role and when it comes to meeting the prospects in the first person. You can progress into an AE role where you can actually have a major impact in actually delivering and executing on those opportunities and meetings created. So if you get into the job, your idea isn't to make it to the next quarter or the next month, is to have a career plan, to have a career plan that meets what you want to do.
Got it.
That's really as simple as that. I want to get into sales with the scope of becoming a VP of sales, VP of marketing, VP of HR. It doesn't really matter because if you do that, and that then depends on the culture, the way the learning and the development and the progression plans that are being made available by the organization. That's a whole sort of story in on itself. But as a salesperson, as an SDR, you need to come in hungry to really be able to grow as a salesperson or to leverage the skills that you develop to transition into another role. That's how you need to sort of approach to it.
Okay, so let's take it. So that was from the SDR role, the BDR role, whatever you want to call it. Now let's take it from the top down, right? I'm a wily VP of sales, CRO. I just want you to pick up the phone and pound the phone. Just dial more, right? So what do you say to that person?
I mean, I got to be careful here. So what I say, don't want to piss anybody off, but what I mean is, if you look at the stats, right, a VP of sales in terms of churn is 18 months, and I've spoken to some VP leaders. That's really the average. Is a VP of sales lasts 18 months.
Yep,
After
17,
that,
18 months. That's it.
something else happens, and then the other person comes and picks up the bowl. It's a hot bowl. He doesn't want to throw it away, but at the same time, if he does, he'll be shouted at. So it's like, how do you create something that takes time? And I spoke about this with Michael Connor. I interviewed him in my podcast, and I asked him about this. I was like, how do you install this culture? And he said that this is something that takes time. You need to have a plan. You need to be sort of in alignment, and the C-suite has to have your back. So it's not a question of the VP himself deciding that the SDR needs to pick up the phone and do nothing. It's also the ability to then align with the C-suite and say that we want to build something that can outlast any other competition. That goes beyond saying, oh, we want to meet next quarter's quota. And what you need to do then is you need to have that buy-in from the C-suite. That's the only way that happens, is if you have the buy-in from the C-suite of visionaries that are looking to outlast, and by outlast I mean stay in the business for 50 to 100 years or 30 years or 20 years or however they want to stay in business. And how do you then give them room and leeway to develop that process? Because once you do it, once you get it done, that's it. Is the problem is getting it there. And there is that thing, everybody's speaking about instant gratification, right? We
Mhm.
just want things and want them now. And what happens there is you look at the short term, but you never look at the medium to long term. And again, play of words, but that's why I love Warren Buffett, is because he thinks about 10 to 20 to 30 to 50 years from now, and he looks at the infrastructure that you have now to see that you can get there. And that's really it's a big challenge. And I think COVID has done more to contribute to how things will change than a lot of people think, because it showed that the old system doesn't work no more. It just
Yeah.
doesn't.
Well, so and let's hit on that because unfortunately, short-term progress, you might see a faster hit if you do certain things focusing on the immediate now, but that short-term focus on the immediate now is going to have long-term ramifications in a negative aspect. So whenever you're talking about the C-suites, not only is it a C-suites, but it's also the different departments, right? Do the SDRs, BDRs, does that inside sales function go to marketing? Does it go to sales? It flops back and forth depending on who's coming on board, who's winning, who's losing, who's having the highest complaint about, oh, the leads suck, the sales suck, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's complaining rather than coming together and figuring this out. And because marketing can play a huge role. Marketing can play the role of helping the sales team get that business acumen to know what's happening in the market because they're heads down having conversations doing things and a lot of them want to be spoon fed. I'd love to say that you can find a whole entire team of the right culture with all of these thinking SDRs that are intellectually curious and will do this on their own. But I'm here to tell you now, you can disagree with me, Nadir, and tell me where to find them. But it seems to me that no matter how altruistic you want to be, the reality smacks you right up in the face that you sometimes have to feed these people, and people like you are maybe the minority rather than the majority of people out there. But you can tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me
No,
I'm wrong and where to find them.
look, like minority. I don't know about that. Not out there. That's for sure. In the sense that the thing is, it's, and I spoke about this before as well, is there's two things. There is alignment, right, and then a challenge of alignment, because it's easier said than done. But if you are investing into your SDRs to become thinkers, to become sort of develop those soft skills, what you have then is you have boots on the ground that can in part not only just build a greater buyer journey experience for the prospects, not only uncover pain point and need that could substantially contribute to the pipeline and the deal sourced with DAE, but also have the understanding firsthand as a form of primary sourced data to pass on back to the marketing team. And if you have this sort of journey and alignment that is created between the marketing team and the SDR, the marketing team and the AE, the marketing team and the CS, where throughout that buyer journey, you share the most relevant insights to the marketing team that can then leverage that insight to then be able to create the content that resonates with those specific instances and sort of cases that arise throughout the deal or a sales life cycle. And to be able to do that, you need to create an infrastructure. You need to create a clear foundation. And to say that there isn't organizations that already have that is not fair, because there are. But the problem is they don't have a platform. It's easier to destroy something than it is to build something, and it catches more attention when you destroy it than it does when you build it. So what the point is how do you shift that, and how do you find those companies that are already doing it, and how do you then support with volume the adoption of what these guys have done? That is a great question. I don't. I'm figuring out the answer as I go along. Right. I myself, I'm collecting data of these users in terms of performance to go show to the VPs to say, look, this SDR has been able to book this much meetings. This is how many opportunities they have created. This is how many deal potentially they will be closed. If you don't hire this tool, if you don't hire this mindset, this is how much you lose. Right.
Yeah.
That's how you'll have a change of mindset of how people operate. That's how you create a value-based business model. That's how you then have a shift into how people think about the SDR and the sales function, right? You need to come up with value.
Yeah. So a couple of
How do you,
things off. Yeah, a couple of things off of that. So um, I think there's companies out there that are doing this, and we're all learning it together. And I think that velocity is really picking up with guys like you and some of the tools that you're bringing together. So I appreciate the insights here. And really, what my point was that the sales development reps, the BDR reps, a lot of them don't have that thinking mindset. A lot of people, unfortunately, just happen into sales. They accidentally get there, right? And I think what you're suggesting is sales should really be a profession, that if you take a professional look at this, the sky's the limit. Because if I can ask the proper questions, if I get critical thinking problem solving. That's what I learned in sales and how to apply this problem solving. Then I can take that into whichever role I want. If I want to stay in sales, and I go up through the ranks. If I want to get into operations, I still have to do those same things. If I need to move in other directions, then I can do that because of these critical thinking skills and interpersonal skills. And the other thing that you suggested is that top of the funnel quality, or excuse me, that top of the funnel quality of that SDR, because they're asking the right questions, because they're aligning right business acumen to problem solve and really identify good opportunities to bring into these initial conversations. So now I'm running better exploratory calls. The quality of their effectiveness and quality of that handoff from that SDR, BDR, top of the funnel to the AE or whatever that's doing right there, the effectiveness of that is then going to decrease my cycle time and sale because my pipeline velocity is now going to be improved because people legitimately want to be there. There's legitimate problems that have been identified to solve instead of me featuring benefiting you to death, which I can live with it or not. Whereas if I can uncover a legitimate business, I don't want to say crisis, but a legitimate business challenge to overcome where I have legitimate ROI, that just makes sense and it goes through. But that all starts back from that thinking SDR. Is that kind of a good
Yeah,
summary of all that good
yeah,
stuff?
yeah. And I would add one other thing, right?
Yeah.
The this is the one thing I will admit openly on air that I can't stand is this idea that because it's been done this way for so long, we can't change it. But you realize that the startups that were formed 5 years ago are only 5 years old. The startups that will start sort of are being made today in 5 years time they'll be 5 year old. So it's like this mindset that I can't change things by sort of influencing what's coming next because what has been done before can't be changed is not a mindset that will actually lead to a lot of success. But if you have that approach of saying, well, I might not be able to change a lot of the people, the old guard, or the way that they have been doing things, but if I can manage to change a few of them and then leverage that to help support the ones that are coming next, that's how you have this transition into how things are being done. Because the people who are creating startups today, they realize that whatever that has been done by the others is not working. They just
Right.
know, right? At least not all of them, but the majority of them know that it doesn't work. So, and the other thing was, oh, we don't have a lot of diversity in sales, which is true, but we don't have a lot of diversity. This is the other thing I can't stand, right? I can't seem to find this kind of people from this sort of ethnicity or this or that. And if there is a will, there's a way. Like, for example, tomorrow, if you are a startup that wants to hire very talented female or male African Americans, go to Harvard University. They have a business department. Say, I want to form a partnership with you, and I want to be able to hire some of the talents, or at least show my company, my culture, and what I'm selling to help sort of have these pool of talent into my company. Since you're looking to hire sort of graduate students, right? So it's like there is this thing of why it's a pain, what is the pain, the how just somehow gets to be figured out for everyone by himself, and nobody actually does share how it's done and how successful it has been for others to sort of repeat that process. And that's really the most important thing is the question of how do I answer this, as opposed to just the why and the what, because that has been raised for the past 10 years. The why and the what has been there for the past 10 years. The how is the next, is the future. Is how do you implement, how do you create culture, how do you create a thinking process, how do you create a thinking SDR, how do you create alignment? Those are the questions that you'll be looking at right now, not the why. Everybody knows why, everybody knows what. It's just the how do you find that? That's what I look forward to be part of.
Yeah. And so I'll throw out yeah, again, I'll keep pitching this, but the great insights right here. There's, I mean, knowledge is ubiquitous, but knowledge is pointless unless if you apply it. So make sure that you take one or two things and apply it, right? Don't get overwhelmed. The other piece is this. Um, as you're There's only going to be a couple of questions that you're going to go down, right? So if you look at a couple of problems, start with that end problem, and then just keep reverse engineering off of, do an A/B question or an ABC question. So, for example, in my world, it might be sales. Hey, we're just not achieving enough sales. All right. Well, so that typically happens for one or two reasons. One is we're not getting in front of enough net new opportunities, or we're getting in front of those opportunities, but we're not winning. And then how they answer that question, then you build off two other questions off of that, and then two other questions off of each one of those answers. And now you have this tree that's going to go right to what your value prop is, or right to your solution. And if you do that and you give that to your new hire, they're able to ask within 3 to 4 questions and sound like they're a wily veteran without pitching a thing. And they are now viewed as a problem solver, because my sense is the new way are not the information that you give, but the information that you can extract through great questioning strategy. And you know that you're doing a really good job when somebody goes, that's a good question. And then a couple of later, they're going, that's a pretty good question. The next time they say, almost inaudibly, that's a good question. And then that's whenever you know that you're bringing value in a conversation. And your senior team, your CEOs, your leadership team, through reading and studying, you can get those questions down. You can go on community to get these questions laid out. I mean, there's only 6 to 10 objections that you're gonna overcome. I'm already happy. I'm already using one. I'm comfortable. Don't have time. Just they're the same stuff. They just sound a little bit different. So it's not going to be that challenging if we all work together. So, and that's really what you're suggesting here, right, Nadir? Is that sense of community pulling this together?
Yes, yes, and I mean, I'll iterate this every time, and you'll hear me always say this is exactly what you said, but always tie it back into their corporate strategy and business strategy.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if they're an SME or a mid market or an enterprise. They'll always have that sort of some more than others. They'll always have that information shared, and that's where you bring context and relevance to earn that right to then be curious and ask those questions the way you described it and have those conversations as opposed to pitches. So yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, and here's the beauty about what Nadir said. So you tie those questions back to their business case. And if guess what? If they don't have a problem there, if that's not going to have the alignment, then you just did your job. You've disqualified the opportunity for right now, and you saved your prospects time, you saved your times, you saved the AE's time, you saved tons of money from wasted pipeline pursuits that were never going to go anywhere anyway. Because if it's a no, if it's an NO, I sure as heck want a K and OW as quickly as possible. So it's all of these things to come together, which goes back to the professionalism that you were talking about earlier.
Exactly, and you need to install that trust. And again, I'll never get tired of mentioning this, but the reason I love Warren Buffett so much in terms of his mindset is that he looks long term, right? And what happens is if you look at this kind of approach on the long term, what you'll have is people that will pick up the phone. They won't tell you what do you want, no, and just hang up the phone. They'll be curious because they know that you come with value. And if you apply this in mass and consistency, the perception of what the buyer in this case or the prospect will have of you when you pick up the phone is that of curiosity as well. Not just, oh, what does this guy want? And he's probably wanting a sort of to sell me something. So, and to shift that perception, you need to go through that route of professionalism, of thinking approach, of alignment, and it will take time. It's not something that will be done overnight, but when you do that, one, you make sure that your business in terms of brand stands out. Two, you make sure that you're more focused and provide clarity around the opportunities that tie into your value value proposition and execute on those. Three, you ensure that the team that you have created is so damn talented and coordinated that you will outlast any other competitor as you grow. And fourth, you contribute to the sales sort of environment and community in a way beyond measurable. So, and when you do that, you open doors, right? You open doors moving forward, and it's really really hard because, and maybe I might be unpopular popular when I say this, but if you look at Silicon Valley, it's about grow, 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 fast, 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 right? And we'll figure it out as we go along. The problem is we'll figure it out as we go along. And you talked about this earlier, is you end up fixing more than you end up actually growing. And that's the big problem around that is how do you make sure you create a solid infrastructure? The Japanese, they knew they were having earthquakes once in a while. They created strong foundations below their buildings so that that never happens again, right? So it's how do you create that early on to make sure that when you grow, you're still sustainable. And that's, that's, yeah,
Yeah,
it's just,
and it's a delicate balance, right? Because you run out of cash, so you need to grow and learn as you go. So that lean startup mentality, but then you also have to adapt and be agile as you're going along. And if you're thinking 2 weeks ahead, you're in trouble. If you're thinking 10 years ahead, without reverse engineering that into what do I need to do today, next 90 days, kind of thing, you're in trouble. So it's a delicate balance that you have to do. And I like your point that you just brought up as well, that you know what, your people are your competitive advantage, because I can rip off your message, I can rip off your look, I can rip off your technology. There's some kid in a closet somewhere in a country that you don't even know where it is on the map, that is equally talented on a computer and figuring this stuff out, self-taught, that your technology isn't going to be able to keep up. So if you don't get the team alignment functioning with execution and allowing the talent to shine, you're going to get passed up, and it's hyper competitive out there, and you're going to get and you're going to get left in the dust. So wholeheartedly agree. So with all of that said, I mean, so what are maybe one or two things that you've found that, you've stubbed your toe on, you found, oh, that hurt. What can we avoid from some hard lessons that you've learned so we don't have to screw up there?
I mean, the interesting thing is the beauty of what I did was learning from those mistakes. So actually, I would go as far as to encourage SDRs to take the initiative and fail, because what happens is everyone has a learning curve. Some people are able to catch it faster than others, learn things faster than others, but the best way of learning is to have those mistakes, is to have those sort of challenges come on board, because once you go through them, you understand what it means and why and how you can approach it moving forward. There are things that you could, of course, avoid, like, for example, maybe don't call the wrong prospect, talk about the wrong thing, or maybe don't disclose some sort of relevant information that is bound by an NDA to a direct competitor just to try and impress him, because those things don't fly. Another thing that happened to me was, if they ask you for, say, where did you get my phone number? Just tell them the truth. You have to be transparent and honest. The biggest flaw that you can bring on that will make it harder for you is if you're not honest, if you're not transparent. And no matter what you say after that, it does not matter. And they will test you. They won't show it, but they'll test you. And there are different ways of testing, but if you stand your ground in terms of being transparent and honest, that's the first layer to then earning the trust to have that conversation, to then be able to do everything else that we talked about, to then be able to make those valuable relationships count and progress that through the funnel. You set a precedent of how they would sort of see your organization and see you, because the SDR is in essence the person that stands in front of that window when you're going shopping and you see some clothes or some shoes, and you see sort of one of those things where they put the clothes or the shoes on. You're that person that is capturing the eye and making sure that they know whether it is worth it or not. So you represent the organization per se, and that's why honesty and transparency is a must. You cannot go around that.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. One, you're going to learn from failure. Love it. So learn from failure, but you're going to have that mindset that failure is a lesson learned, right? If you shrink under the failure, and here's my recommendation: you only fail if you give up, right? You're going to make mistakes, you're going to screw up, and you're going to make all kinds of learning lessons. You'll only fail if you give up and quit. So definitely learn from those mistakes, but then two, with integrity, right? If you have integrity, that's going to carry the day. How'd you get my number? Internet. I mean, they're all over the place. can I share with you the reason my call? If it doesn't make sense, I'll get off the phone. I promise. Right. So, let's not get hung up on these things or just make stuff up. So love it. All right. So those are
I
some,
just want to mention another thing, if I may. Like
yeah,
in terms of like when you look at integrity and you look at all of the other things that you've mentioned, the most important thing as well is when you apply that curiosity in the learning phase from those failures, that's how you make yourself even more of an elite when it comes to a salesperson as an SDR. And that happened to me a lot of times where I failed and I asked her, I'm like, how did that happen? How can I avoid that happen next time? How can I make it better? That's how you apply that curiosity and thinking mindset to evolve yourself beyond just evolving as part of the function and contributing to the business, but also as a person that becomes then a problem solver and a thinker. So yeah, you could apply it in a lot of different ways, but you still win
yeah.
in terms of how you go about it.
It's a definite life lesson. So, how about this? A business hack for talent, how to hire, sales, how to execute what we've been talking about, or maybe scaling. How do we scale this? Because you said, how do we do this at scale? What's a way that we can scale this thing?
And
Look,
the most
looks like maybe
important number.
let me back you up and I'll ask that question again because I think you froze up. Are you there again? There we go. Okay. Hey, so
Yeah, yeah.
let's go back to this. So one type of business hack, please, whether it's for talent, how do I hire a person like you're talking about, that thinking SDR, or how do I execute in a sales function to do these things? Or lastly, you talked about how do I do this at scale or in mass? One hack based upon one of those things, please.
So I mean, I'll share what I know,
Yeah.
right? Like I won't speculate. But for example, for me, if you come from a business undergrad degree, that's already a one step ahead because you understand the fundamentals, right? So then it's just a matter of applying those fundamentals and understanding, and then that thinking will come through because in business there is a lot of thinking that is being involved, and the fact that you're involved in a function that is in essence about making new business, that is one of the hacks is identify talent that has an undergraduate in business, for example. That's one. The second hack is when it comes to sort of when you're looking at how do I scale this, there are different technologies, there are different ways of doing it, but the most important thing is you need to have the right infrastructure. So if you're an SDR manager, you need to ask yourself, once I hire this talent, how do I empower this talent to have what he needs to be able to execute? And what you see right now is a shift from efficiency to effectiveness, right? How do I make the job of the SDR more effective, outcome driven? You cannot be driven by meetings. You have to be driven by meetings that translate into opportunities, that translate into deal sourced. So this law of numbers and averages of like, yeah, you need to have at least 12 qualified sales leads and you need to do at least 20 meetings, the that's just playing the law of averages. But if you educate and invest heavily invest, go find partnerships. For example, my friend Mike Simmons, he has this thing that helps a lot of SDRs and salespeople have access to the thinking process through content that they can consume online and then apply it regularly, fail, learn, and come back, right? And those are things that you are able to do as form of hacks to get the ball running. The third thing is share the results, share the insights. Ain't nobody gonna come to you and say, I don't believe in this if you post that my SDRs have been able to book 50 meetings, of which 40 translated into opportunity and of which 20 translated into deal source, compared to I got my team who's made 200 meetings and had 60 opportunities and only 10 of them closed, right? So it's like, if you can validate the model with actual results that you track, that's how you'll be able to help enable that change. And people like you that are doing podcasts and interviewing people like me regularly with other talent out there. That's how you then have that shift in terms of mindset and how people do things. I think it's how do you create seamless approach and alignment. And if you apply these small hacks, you can start. This is not a silver bullet, but that's how you can start to really then form what is a thinking sales team and a thinking SDR.
Got it. All right. So winding down here as we're looking at the clock. Last question is this: resources that you might recommend. What podcast, book? What's one resource that we should be checking out to become as cool as you?
So there is a lot of books, and maybe my favorite in terms of soft skills, in terms of approaching with the ability to open up the prospect and get more information. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I remember reading that book. I found two things. I was so excited, left the book and started applying them, then came back to the book, learned more stuff, and that's how I got the prospect to open up. If it comes to understanding the value of need and how to approach that with questions, there's a book from Clayton Christensen called How to Compete Against Luck. And he talks about understanding what people need to hire and why people need to hire the things that the jobs that you do, right? So you're offering sort of sales services. Understanding why I would hire your services to do what job is imperative in the role of an SDR, and to have the mindset of how to get there with the right questions. That's another book I would recommend. How to Compete Against Luck.
Cool. I had not heard of that one. I'm going to check that one out.
Oh,
But hey,
he's a great man. Great man.
I appreciate it. And then I lied. Now we just talked about integrity, and I lied. So what's the future hold? Right? We got the magic 8 ball. What's coming down the pike? What's going to bite us in the ass if we're not careful?
If we're not careful, what you're gonna have is you're gonna have more companies that are gonna get out of the sort of the sales or the startup ecosystem. That's where I'm worried. And you spoke about this earlier. Is you have a lot of people raising a lot of cash, and then figure it out as it goes. And what happens is they say 95% of them fail. My question is, how do I shift that around and have only 5% fail and 95 don't? And if we're not able to shift that mindset on how do we approach a value based sales, on how do we educate around thinking process, and how do we leverage the SDRs and those alignments that we spoke about, what you're going to see is the deterioration of the sales sort of ecosystem. And as a result of that, less companies are going to succeed. As a result of that, less people are going to be having jobs. And, it just goes back in to the point where it's not looking good. So and COVID has sort of initiated that, right? It's just shown that what you used to do before does not work. And this right now is a precedent that will stand for whatever comes next. So if you don't adapt, if you don't become agile, you risk becoming irrelevant. And if you become irrelevant, you're out of market. And if you're out of market, you can guess what happens next.
To use the Queen's English, you ain't helping anyone. All right. Hey, Nadir, I can't thank you enough for your time here. Who should reach out to you? How should they do it? And why should they reach out to you, Nadir?
So they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Nadir Mansor. And why they should reach out to me. If you're curious, want to learn more on how to apply a value-based approach, a thinking approach, how to leverage a solution that can help you execute on that with clarity and focus, more than happy to help share that. Why again? I have experience in different sort of verticals, so that gives me different perspectives on how to tackle sales within those verticals. And yeah.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate it, and definitely tap Nadir because he's big in the Rev Genius space, giving back to SDRs. I think talking to you offline. Appreciate your heart and what you're trying to do.
I want to say one last thing is, like, if you are a thinking SDR and you love this conversation, please reach out to us, at least to me. Yeah, for sure.
There you go. Me too. Hey, thank you so much. And oh man, time is always going. So this is Bryan Whittington on behalf of Nadir Mansor for the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Get after it, guys. Let's put some of this stuff to use. Thanks so much, everyone. See ya.